Said at the beginning. Let's pass it on to you because you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks. I just want to go back and rewind to where Jack mentioned entrepreneurship being a kind of a alternative word to use for capitalism, because I don't think we want to fall into the trap of calling everyone who's rich evil. And I do think there's a tendency, and I think we have to resist that. If somebody, I think the question has to be asked, was this wealth gotten with force or fraud in any way? And I agree with what Scott said. Sometimes it's ancestral, you fell into something that was plundered, in which case it's not really legitimate. I would agree with that as well. So we do have to ask the question, instead of debating whether capitalism is a good thing or bad thing, I would ask the person a question who's even discussing it. What kind of capitalism are you talking about? Are you talking about the kind that plunders and uses the force of government to get its way, evil protectionism that's been going on for decades and decades? Or are you talking about the guy who came up with a great idea and made $1 billion because people liked his product?
Did he patent it? Yeah. What's the last thing you said? Did he patent it?
And this is the red book of agorism, the agorist class theory book. Konkin explains human society can be divided into at least two classes, but one class is characterized by its control of the state and its extraction of unearned wealth from the other class. So, just the summary of this book would be that the real two classes are the ones that benefit from the state, and the other class is the one that is stolen from more than it benefits. And some people look at making a sale to the public or a member of the public or a sale to the government as equal, but the one to the government is actually involved in the whole system of organized theft.
So we got about 6 minutes, so we'll try to take the last few questions. I know you have a question.
That guy's had his hand.
What's it? Well, no.
The guy in the black shirt had his hand in front, and the guy in the gray shirt was next.
Yeah, and then we'll get to you, and we'll see how much we can do. So try not to go crazy. We'll try not to go crazy. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Not them. Go crazy.
So, semantics aside, obviously it's very helpful. I appreciate the historical, etymological, context. I think there's still some, from a libertarian standpoint, or I should say from my standpoint, some disagreements. One of them is, I think, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. I think the gentleman over here said, Scott, said that no form of capitalism, I'm paraphrasing, doesn't get, basically that to get those resources, they have to be exploited or taken from others. And I guess I challenge that assumption because that assumes that sort of wealth or value is like a zero-sum. One person takes a slice, other people don't get a slice. To use an analogy which we don't like, and then I'll use a real example, the seed analogy, given stupid perfect setups, there's no one that was harmed with that. Giving a more realistic analogy, I used to have a license plate that said capitalist, and I got a lot of flack for it.
Oh, right.
But I ran an e-waste recycling company, and so I put on an event. People would bring material to me. I'd get it out of the waste stream. I would be able to.
I was a recycling center too, so
cool.
I know exactly
I would benefit from that. They would benefit from it. And I don't think that I cannot see one that's exploited the chain unless I ship some monitors over to China and they would get exploited that way.
Sorting in, fresh water is being used, communities are becoming polluted in the heavy metals.
But there are
I know
compliance organizations say, okay, so I'd go to a compliant group. So I feel like it is possible. It's not the status everywhere, but I think it is possible to do that where you're adding value, you're creating value, you're not taking it from anybody. And I think to tie into that, another thing that was said was, will the market sort these things out, or will we? And I like that call to action, but I also feel that we are the market.
We should talk e-waste after this.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
We don't even have to answer that one, do we?
I don't think so. Let's move on to the next question.
question.
I don't really disagree with that too much.
You were next after that. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Have you ever read Ronald Coase's theory of the firm? And if yes, do you have any Because you claim that in the ideal world there will be no corporations and there will be no firms. Have any of you read Ronald Coase's theory of the firm? And if yes, any answer to it?
And the thing is, for me, it's inevitable. I know it will not be.
First off, I love that you just asked me if I read Coase, because there's a meme going around on the Libertarian blog, not blogosphere, but Facebookosphere, and it's basically just a joke about, you know, people who have these predictions haven't read Coase. One of the so I love that you just asked that, because that just made my whole PorcFest. Thank you very much. Well, so it's the nature of firms.
The theory of the firm.
Right. No, so
You read the meme, not the book.
right.
Yeah.
So I read the meme. I read the meme about the book. I've not read the book, although I'm reading a book.
It's a paper. It's not even a book, but
Right,
sure.
So I'm reading a book right now called Organization Theory by Kevin Carson, which gives a sort of free market anti-capitalist perspective on organization theory. I can tell you, he sure as hell has read Coase, and he's read a lot of other people too. I definitely recommend that book. I have my preferences and ideas and dreams about what a freer society will look like. I think transaction costs. I know Coase was mostly talking a lot about transaction costs. I think a lot of these things can be minimized through local, decentralized network communities. I'm not saying it'd be perfect or anything like that, and I'm not saying I have like the full layout of it. You know, what it would look like. I think that kind of undermines anarchism in some important ways. So I haven't read Coase, although I love that you asked me that I did. And I have read Kevin Carson, who has read Coase, and he has some of these same sort of predictions, and he takes some of it.
Larger than that, though, look, to think that the world that we live in today will always exist like this is a lack of imagination. History before humans was here. I mean, the billions of years. We're not even scratching the surface of history. And to imagine, I think to say that yes, corporations are going to exist forever, that our social relations are going to exist like they are, is absolutely no imagination whatsoever. And I think the thing is, for those who are younger, corporations haven't always looked like they look today. Multinationals, the way they are, it's a barely 30-year, 40-year phenomena, exactly the way that they are now. But if you were born in 1980, you just assume that's the way it is. Or you're born in 1990, you're just like, this is the way it is. It's not always that way. And the thing is, what I would challenge us to do is imagine worlds that we can't even imagine. Not like science fiction land, right, where technology saves us and we're colonizing some other place, but where we actually can reimagine our worlds beyond what we live in today. And I think that PorcFest and things like this actually begin to crack that history open to do that. But we're still fish in water, right? But it's hard for us to see the shore, right? But at some point we're going to jump up on the shore and it's going to look totally different than what we thought under the water.
Okay, so we're going to let this spill over a little bit, so we're going to try to answer more questions. So who had questions? 1, 2, 3, and okay, so we'll try to answer these 3, and then we'll let you guys go.
So let's just say, for example, I do want to advocate for let's call it a stateless market. I realize we're getting into semantics, we're getting into principles and all that, but if we're not going to define capitalism as a stateless market, then can you, from each of your perspectives, can you each differentiate for me what is the difference between capitalism and corporatism?
I mean, I feel like we did that at the beginning, but let's give it a second try.
Yeah, capitalism was the earliest used of the two, and it was early 1800s, and it was really referring to the fact that capital, that wealth could be held in the form of capital now rather than land, because money and banking were becoming a much bigger aspect of society. Like if you go back to, say, the 1500s, they may have had some metal coin, but the biggest form of wealth was land and cattle and things like that. And the princes of Europe would fight over stealing each other's land to have more resources that way. Later, in the late 1800s, came the term corporatism, which was coined by some Catholic intellectuals that really envisioned this society that had state and large business enterprises all kind of integrated. And then the corporation itself really came into being in its present form, I think also in the late 1800s, And to me, as a libertarian, it's a legal manipulation of a certain class of people that have enough money for lawyers and lobbyists to get law written in a way that favors their type of form of business. And essentially in the next 100 years you see the corporations rise and drive out all the smaller businesses because they got this advantageous state in law. When Mussolini came along in the 20s, he was quoting essentially these earlier Catholic intellectuals on corporatism, and so he called it fascism, i.e. corporatism, and to him those words were kind of interchangeable. So corporatism, yeah, means forming large, having the large corporations integrate with the state in what we would actually call fascism, or kind of the modern American system, which most people don't call fascism. They say, oh, we have a democratic republic, but you know, it's in essence, it's fascism or corporatism, or the latest implementation of capitalism, which was the earliest word.
I mean, I might have a few things to say, but let's pass it on to the last two people and just kind of wrap up here. So you and you, right? Okay.
My question is about exploitation. I think that exploitation is a really negative word, and I definitely, I don't want to exploit anybody, but I would like you to go into more detail about what you mean by that. For instance, in order to continue the seed analogy, if I find that there are thousands of people who are starving, and I decide to plant hundreds of thousands or millions of seed, put the labor into it, find the water, do all the work that is necessary, am I being exploitative of the people who I am saving from starvation if I demand something for my labor?
Short answer, no.
Yes, Jack's short answer is no. Me is, that's a lot to take in. I'm not sure how to answer that. Although, I'm also tempted to say no, but I think this is more directed at Scott.
If you have an answer, I actually have the Johnny Appleseed story that goes to seeds.
Oh, yeah.
Let me do this real quick.
Sure.
Johnny Appleseed was from, I forget his real name, but he was from Leominster, Massachusetts. And he was actually a fundamentalist religious convert to a certain school of thought. And he actually traveled west, I think all the way out to Ohio, and he would plant seeds, just like your example. And the reason he would plant seeds was because there would be new settlers there, and they wanted apple trees. But he had to plant them and let them grow for a couple of years, and then he'd sell the seedlings. And so the new farmers would have a head start on having apple trees. So he sold them, and that's how he survived, doing just exactly what you're saying. So I don't think he was exploiting anyone doing that. He was actually being entrepreneurial. He was mixing his labor and capital. Well, he had zero capital, unless you want to call the seeds capital, which is a good possibility that you would call that.